8:55 a.m., outside the Atlanta courthouse. Donna Carter gripped the steering wheel, staring at the towering courthouse ahead. 5 minutes. She had 5 minutes before stepping into the most scrutinized case of the year. Her name was already plastered across headlines. Judge Carter to preside over wrongful arrest trial. Will the system finally hold itself accountable? Outside, the crowd was alive, protesters holding up signs, shouting, "Justice for Clinton!" End police brutality. The press swarmed the courthouse steps, cameras flashing like lightning. Donna adjusted her robe and took a deep breath. She wasn't just a judge today. She was a symbol. She pushed open the car door. Her heels struck the pavement, steady, deliberate, unshaken. She took the side entrance, avoiding the chaos of the front steps. Van, a shadow stepped into her path. "Stop right there." Her pulse spiked. A uniformed officer blocked her way. His nameplate read Corbin Hayes. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hand resting near his belt. His expression was hard, unreadable. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification." Donna blinked. Her fingers curled around the judge's ID hanging from her neck. She lifted it. Her voice was calm, controlled. "I'm Judge Carter, I need to be inside." Corbin's eyes flicked to the badge, then right back to her face. Something in his stare felt off, like he was searching for a reason to doubt her. "We've had reports of a suspicious individual near this entrance," he said. Donna's breath hitched. She knew exactly what was happening. She had seen it before. She had lived it before. Her fingers tightened around the badge. Her voice remained even, but sharper now. "I am not a suspicious individual. I am the presiding judge of the trial happening inside that courtroom in exactly 5 minutes." Corbin didn't move. His hand hovered too close to his holster. Donna's heartbeat thudded in her ears. For a split second she wondered, if she had made one wrong move, would he have drawn his weapon? Then, "That's enough, Officer Hayes." A voice cut through the tension. Sergeant Allen Brooks. He walked forward with deliberate authority, his eyes locking onto Corbin's. "She's the judge." The words hung in the air. Corbin's fingers twitched, his lips pressing into a thin line. A flicker of hesitation crossed his face. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. Donna held his gaze for a moment longer. Something burned in her chest. Not fear, fury, but she swallowed it down. She turned and walked past him without a word, her hands still shaking. Inside the courthouse, she moved through the halls, her heartbeat still too fast. Her grip on her files felt too tight. She had spent her life fighting for justice. Yet today, justice almost denied her at the courthouse door. She reached the courtroom doors, paused, breathed. Then, I pushed them open. The room fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. She took her place behind the bench. Her hands no longer shook. She lifted the gavel. "The court is now in session." 9:00 a.m. Inside the courthouse. The gavel struck once. A sharp sound cut through the courtroom, silencing the murmurs. Donna Carter sat behind the towering judge's bench, her posture rigid, composed. But inside, she was still burning. The encounter outside lingered in her mind. The weight of Corbin Hayes' stare. The way his hand hovered too close to his holster. The way he looked at her, not as a judge, but as a suspect. She pushed the thoughts away, because now all eyes were on her. She scanned the courtroom. On one side, Clinton Rivers, 22 years old, arrested for waiting outside his own building. No crime, no weapon, just a young black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. He sat still, shoulders tight with tension, his hands clasped together in his lap. Beside him, his defense attorney, Marcus Lane, whispered something in his ear. Clinton gave a small nod, but Donna saw the way his fingers twitched, the way his chest rose and fell a little too fast. He wasn't just nervous. He was terrified. Then her gaze shifted to the other side, to Corbin Hayes, the same officer who had just stopped her outside. Now sitting in the witness box, his uniform stiff and pressed, his face a blank slate. But Donna saw it, the way his fingers drummed lightly against his leg. A small, almost imperceptible movement. But it was there. Unease. She adjusted the microphone. He cleared her throat. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Court is now in session. We will begin proceedings in the case of Clinton Rivers versus the City of Atlanta. 5 a.m. Testimony begins. The prosecutor stood. The state calls Officer Corbin Hayes to the stand. The room shifted. Chairs creaked as people adjusted. A low murmur spread through the gallery. Corbin stood, walked toward the witness box, and took the oath. Donna watched him closely. His movements were mechanical, but his jaw tightened slightly when he sat down. The prosecutor approached. Officer Hayes, can you describe the events leading to Mr. Rivers' arrest? Corbin cleared his throat. I was patrolling the area when I saw Mr. Rivers standing near an apartment complex. He was acting nervous, looking around a lot. The prosecutor nodded. Did you witness him committing a crime? No. Did he have a weapon? No. Was he trespassing? Corbin paused. Not exactly, but he didn't appear to belong there. A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Donna felt her fingers tighten around the gavel. The prosecutor's eyes narrowed slightly. And what, Officer Hayes, made you believe he didn't belong there? Corbin shifted. He glanced at Donna, just for a second, before turning back. It's a high-income area. I've worked that beat for years. I know who lives there. The prosecutor's voice was sharp now. And Mr. Rivers didn't fit that image? Corbin opened his mouth, closed it. A beat of silence. The prosecutor stepped closer. So let me ask you again, was Clinton Rivers arrested because he was committing a crime, or because you assumed he didn't belong? The room was dead quiet. Donna watched Corbin's throat move as he swallowed. She saw it. The moment the realization hit. The moment he knew. 9:20 a.m. The tension breaks. The prosecutor let the silence sit for just long enough. Then he turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need to tell you what just happened here. Officer Hayes admitted, in his own words, that he arrested Mr. Rivers based on assumption, not evidence. That is not law enforcement. That is profiling. Corbin stiffened. His lips parted slightly, as if to interject, but nothing came out. Donna let out a slow breath. She turned to the defense. Mr. Lane, do you wish to cross-examine? Marcus Lane rose. Yes, Your Honor. But before he could speak, Corbin did something unexpected. He leaned toward the microphone, his voice lower than before. I may have misjudged the situation. A shockwave went through the courtroom. Even Donna's eyebrows raised slightly. Marcus Lane crossed his arms. Officer Hayes, let's be clear. You didn't just misjudge this situation. You arrested an innocent man. Do you acknowledge that? Corbin hesitated. Then, yes. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the crowd. Donna let the words sink in. The first crack in his defense. She lifted the gavel. Court will recess for 15 minutes. Then she stood, walked swiftly toward her chambers. Her heart pounded. She had expected resistance, defensiveness. But instead, Corbin Hayes had just done something she never thought she'd see. He had admitted it. For the first time in his career, he had acknowledged the weight of his mistake. Donna wasn't sure if it changed anything, but it was a start. And in this fight, every start mattered. 10:30 a.m. The courtroom holds its breath. The gavel struck once. A sharp sound echoed through the chamber, settling over the tightly wound tension. Donna Carter sat tall behind the bench, her face composed. But inside, she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning. She scanned the room, eyes moving from the defendant's table to the witness stand. On one side, Clinton Rivers, a young black man in his early 20s, wrongfully arrested, stripped of his dignity. He sat stiff, hands clenched into fists, as if trying to make himself smaller. Donna saw it. The exhaustion in his eyes. The quiet plea, "Don't let them take my life from me." On the other hand, Corbin Hayes, the officer who arrested him, the same man who had stopped her outside the courthouse. The irony wasn't lost on her. He sat in the witness stand now, but his posture wasn't as rigid as before. There was something different about him. Something cracking. Donna let her voice cut through the silence. "Officer Hayes, you're still under oath." Corbin nodded stiffly. He looked less sure of himself now. The prosecutor approached. His voice sharp, unyielding. "Officer Hayes, we're going to play a recording for the jury." Corbin's fingers twitched. For the first time, he looked nervous. The prosecutor gestured toward the clerk. A screen flickered to life. A grainy security camera feed played. The arrest, the moment that changed everything. A still image first, Clinton standing outside his apartment building checking his phone. Then, Corbin's patrol car pulling up. The screen flickered again. No words were exchanged. No warning. Just Corbin stepping out of the car, approaching. His stance was aggressive from the start. Clinton's hands were up, his face confused. Then, Corbin shoved him against the wall. Handcuffs, sirens, the flash of red and blue lights. The courtroom felt suffocatingly silent. Corbin stared at the screen. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. The prosecutor let the video run for a few more seconds. Then he turned back to Corbin. "Is that what you call proper procedure?" Corbin's jaw tightened. His breath hitched. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, "I misread the situation." A hush fell over the room. The prosecutor leaned forward. "Misread? Officer Hayes, you tackled a man to the ground without cause." Corbin looked down at his hands. His fingers were clasped together tightly, as if trying to hold himself together. "I thought—" He stopped, shook his head. "I don't know what I thought." For the first time, he sounded lost. Donna watched him closely. He was unraveling. The weight of his actions was finally sinking in. But was it enough? Was awareness the same as accountability? 11:00 a.m. The defense rests. The defense attorney rose. He walked toward Corbin, his tone measured. "Officer Hayes, have you made wrongful arrests before?" Corbin's head snapped up. He looked caught off guard. A hesitation. "Too long." "I know." The defense attorney's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you sure?" Corbin's throat moved as he swallowed. The pause spoke louder than words. The defense attorney let the silence settle. Then he turned toward the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think about something. If Officer Hayes is hesitant to answer that question, ask yourselves, how many other Clinton Rivers are out there? How many weren't lucky enough to have cameras watching?" A few jurors shifted in their seats. Donna could feel the energy in the room shifting. The case was no longer just about Clinton Rivers. It was about all the names the world never heard. She gripped the gavel. "This court will now recess for deliberation." She stood, walked back to her chambers, her pulse pounding in her ears. She had seen cases like this before. But today, something was different. Today, a crack had formed in the armor of the system. And Donna intended to widen it. 11:45 a.m., Monitor courtroom. The gavel struck once. The sound echoed, cutting through the weight of anticipation in the room. Donna Carter sat tall, but inside she felt the weight of what was about to happen. This was the moment everything had led up to. The jury had returned. The verdict was in. She looked out at the room. On one side, Clinton Rivers, a 22-year-old black man wrongfully arrested. His mother sat beside him, hands gripping his sleeve as if she could shield him from whatever came next. He wasn't just waiting for a decision. He was waiting to see if the system would finally work for him, or if, once again, it would fail. On the other side, Corbin Hayes, the officer who had arrested him, the same man who had stopped Donna at the courthouse door. Now he sat stiff and silent, his face unreadable. But Donna could see the tension in his fingers, clenched so tightly they had turned white. He was waiting, too. She turned toward the jury box. The foreman stood, a folded slip of paper in hand. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. As the jury reached a verdict, the foreman nodded. His voice was steady but firm. "We have, Your Honor. 11:50 a.m. The decision." Donna took the paper from the bailiff, unfolded it. "Read the words." She let the silence stretch. Then her voice rang clear and steady. "In the case of Clinton Rivers, we find the defendant not guilty." A sharp inhale spread through the room. Clinton's mother let out a strangled sob, covering her mouth with both hands. Clinton himself exhaled deeply, his shoulders slumping in relief. But Donna wasn't done. She turned the page. Her heart hammered, because this was the real test. In the case of Officer Corbin Hayes on the charge of wrongful arrest, we find the defendant guilty. The room exploded. Gasps, shouts. A wave of emotion crashed over the courtroom. Some people clapped, others cursed. Corbin sat frozen. His face paled, his fingers gripping the table so hard Donna thought the wood might splinter. She brought down the gavel. "Order in the court." Slowly the noise subsided. She turned to Corbin. For the first time, his expression cracked. Not anger, not defiance, but something else. A man realizing, maybe for the first time, that the badge doesn't protect you when the truth is undeniable. 12:00 p.m. The final words. Donna leaned forward slightly. Her voice wasn't cruel, but it was firm. "Officer Hayes, the law exists to protect, not to profile. Today, justice was served, not just for Mr. Rivers, but for the system itself." She saw his throat move as he swallowed. His eyes flickered, as if part of him wanted to fight back. But another part, a deeper part, knew there was nothing left to say. She turned to Clinton. "Mr. Rivers, you are free to go." The words hung in the air. For a moment, Clinton didn't move, as if he couldn't believe it. Then his lawyer touched his arm. And just like that, he stood up. A free man. 12:10 p.m. The aftermath. Donna stepped into the hall, the air thick with emotion. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing. "Judge Carter, do you think this verdict will change things?" She didn't answer, because she knew the truth. One case doesn't fix a system, but it's a start. She turned toward the exit, and for the first time all day, she let herself breathe. Justice is not just about verdicts, it's about who gets heard, who gets believed, and who gets the chance to walk away free. For Clinton Rivers, today's ruling meant more than innocence. It meant reclaiming his humanity, something that had been stripped away in a moment of bias. For Corbin Hayes, the guilty verdict was not just punishment, it was a mirror, forcing him to see the weight of his actions. And for Donna Carter, this case was both a victory and a reminder. Because one ruling won't fix a broken system. One verdict won't erase the years of injustice. But it's a step toward accountability, a step toward a world where justice isn't defined by the color of your skin, but by the truth. We all have choices. To stand silent or to speak up. To judge unfairly or to look deeper. The real question is, when the moment comes, will you do what is right? Because justice isn't just in the courtroom. It's in all of us.